right, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Antler and Feather Co. podcast, the podcast for new and adult onset hunters. My name's Vince, and this is a show where I, an inexperienced hunter, bring on people from the hunting community who do know a thing or two about hunting, and as I ask them new questions and I learn new things, I just want to pass them right along to you guys. So before we get too far in, I'm going to issue you a challenge. I want you to pause this right now. Make sure you come back, but pause it right now and go follow us on Instagram. That's at Antler Feather Co. When you do that, that's going to help me to grow this podcast, and that's going to allow me to keep bringing great guests on, which ultimately is going to make you more deadly in the woods. All right, so this week we're going to talk about the second most important part of hunting. That's our coffee. I would venture to argue that our morning coffee is just as important of a choice as the weapon that we take into the woods with us. I know most of us, especially if we have kids, we need that little jolt of caffeine in the morning, especially when you got a long, dark walk into the woods. Our guest this week knows his coffee. He's the founder of Our Grounds Coffee Company, and they specialize in roasting high-quality, small-batch coffee so you can get your buzz on with a great-tasting coffee and get after it, all while helping conserve our public lands. So please welcome to the show, Ed Speakman. Ed, how we doing today, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
How's the rut been treating you this season? Has the rut been better, or has it been more coffee sales have been the good part of the season?
Man, it's pretty much all coffee right now. I got out a couple of times. My wife and I just had our third baby earlier this month, I guess at the beginning of last month. So
congratulations.
A little bit of chaos. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I hear you. It seems like this year for a lot of people that I know, we've waited all year, we trained all year, we got all our gear together, and everyone seems to have had like life events happen around me to where it's like none of us are out hunting very often, and everything has compounded right around the rut. So it's like early season when you really aren't going to, you can kill things early season if you know what you're doing, but like for me, I really rely on the rut, and then all this stuff happens. Is like I've been out like twice. Luckily, I was able to put a doe down, but other than that, it's been a pretty uneventful season.
No, man, it's hard. It's hard. Even the rut can be hard, man. Like if you don't prioritize the rut in the beginning of like your year with like I don't know, I guess vacation days or like family things, and like you get people who are scheduled weddings in November. It's like a huge wedding thing. I'm at that point now where like I'm at the age where like all my friends are like having kids. Like my best friend just had a kid yesterday, so like he hasn't been out hunting. So it's. You get out when you can. I've only been out a couple times all season. I think maybe once during the rut.
Yeah. And, I tell myself, and I know that it's true, like, God willing, I've got years and years and years of hunting ahead of me. All of these things are only going to happen once. So it's like, it'll be okay, It definitely took the pressure off when I did get a doe a few weeks ago, because then I'm like, at least I've got one deer in the freezer. So if I don't get out the rest of the season, we'll be okay.
Right. Right. At least something in the freezer.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to cut out to a quick prayer real quick, and then we'll hop into some of the questions I got for you. Sound good?
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
All right. Lord Jesus, I thank you for another day, another opportunity to record a podcast. I thank you for the sacrifice you made in my place. Without you, we would be hopeless, and because of what you did on the cross, I'm able to have a relationship with you. We're able to enjoy your creation, and I'm just so thankful for that. I hope that through this podcast, we can glorify you first and foremost, and we can also just learn a ton of stuff. I think that one of the reasons we were put on this earth is to learn. That's one of the gifts you gave us. So I ask that you would be over this conversation. I thank you for Ed and his time, and I just ask that you would help this conversation be entertaining and educational, and we ask all these things in your great name. Amen. All right. So just to start off, this is going to be a very coffee-heavy episode, but I do want to kind of know your background in hunting. So what got you into hunting, and then also why did you choose for your coffee company to kind of market specifically to hunters?
Yeah, so I guess I've been hunting for a while now. I know like the adult onset hunter is like the new thing. Everybody, I think you're an adult onset hunter. Like you didn't grow up doing it. I got a lot of friends that are that way. I guess I've been hunting like 15 years or so. So about half my life. Grew up hunting upstate Pennsylvania, like the mountain country. I love it up there. Started out bow hunting right away. I think I rifle hunted like one time when I was a kid, but then just straight into archery. Just because you can hunt for so much longer here in PA.
Yeah.
You only get like 2 weeks in certain units for like a rifle hunt, and it's like right at the holidays, and I never seem to find my way out for gun season.
Right.
And archery, the days are a lot longer, so I can get out earlier or get out later, after work or after I get kids down or whatever. But yeah, man, it's pretty much all I do anymore. It's just bow hunt,
Yep. Yeah, I've really found a love for bow hunting to the point, like, it's like I've said on past podcasts, I have nothing against gun hunting. If that's your jam or if that's what, in your area, there's certain areas where gun hunting's just in your roots, and that's fine. It's just not for me. I like the intimacy of bow hunting much better. I like the challenge of it. Not to say that rifle hunting can't be challenging. I'm sure it has its own set of challenges, but something about bow hunting, man, it's just different.
I mean, like, if I'm actually leaning more towards the gun lately. I think it's just because of my opportunity to get out, like, and you get caught up in these things where you're like looking on Instagram and you think everybody in the country is killing deer except for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you think everybody is hunting except for you, but like everybody has like life, that gets in the way. And I've seen like my target buck like 3 times this year during bow season, which I never am that lucky. And I just like can't close the distance. He's like within 50 yards a bunch of times, and I can't close it up. I'm ready for shotgun season. In PA, there's part of my country or part of my state where you do shotgun for a few weeks, and I'm gonna kill this. I know I'm gonna kill this guy. I've seen him like 3 times, and I'm hoping I can connect with the shotgun.
To kind of jump back to your comment about the whole, like, I posted about having buck envy a few times. Like, yeah, everybody on your thing is posting, and it's not, you have your like, handful of people who are shooting small deer, but mostly it's just these ginormous bucks. And you're like, where are these things at? Like, I'm in Iowa. I should be able to walk out my door in them anywhere and see just a freaking 200-inch deer. And I have yet to see one. I've seen probably live. I've probably seen like a 160, but like, that doesn't compare to what everyone else seems to be putting down.
I tell you one, you're not seeing a 160 run around Pennsylvania. It's super rare. Like, I think Iowa, you're like, you walk out your front door and there should be like a booner running around. You know what I mean? I walk out my door and I'm like, oh, it's a doe. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And that, hey man, at the end of the day, I've kind of just like lowered my expectations of myself. And I'm very much like I'm a meat hunter. If antlers come with it, that's a bonus, but I don't feel like I'm learning a lot, but I'm not experienced enough to be chasing 180-inch deer yet. I just don't have the skill set for it yet.
Oh, dude, it's so hard. Like, how long have you been hunting for?
This is my 3rd deer season.
Oh man, you're like brand new into it. Yeah, you should be killing whatever legal comes by. You should just put it on the ground. Like, get experience. Just experience the whole thing. There's like, you see those 200-inch deer or those 180-inch deer, not by any means like I'm some Joe Blow hunter, like, big game hunter, but like, you should be shooting whatever legal deer, whatever makes you happy, first and foremost. But, you hold out for a 180 or a 200-inch deer, they're so hard to get in close to, especially with a bow. Like, if you're sitting in a box blind on a cornfield, yeah, hold off and see. But like, if you're hunting like timber, and they're so hard to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially on public land, because it's, I've noticed when I do feel like I've put a plan together, either I leave for the day and there's someone heading right in there, or you just don't ever know. You don't know who's coming behind you. You don't know any of that. And so you can formulate this great plan for the next day, and it can be ruined a half hour after you leave.
Oh, without a doubt. It doesn't even have to be that close. Like, I'm a big turkey hunter, and this year on public land twice, I've had birds coming into me, and people shoot them on their way to me. They set up between them and my decoys, and then I get them coming in, and then they're killing them on the way to my decoys, and it's just like, golly, I had that set up perfect. And then, but that's the game, especially here in PA. We have so many hunters, man. It's gun season. It's like, it sounds like Vietnam out there. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember what was it? The first year I went out for gun season, and I was just sitting there, and yeah, as soon as it ticked over from like legal shooting light on the clock, oh my God, it was like World War III.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah. And some of the people, you question what the hell they're doing out there, because you hear a boom, 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 boom. And it's like, dude, if you couldn't drop that thing in the first one or two, like now you're just sending slugs, they're spraying across the land, and I'm just waiting for a slug to come zinging by me. So to get into it, I want to know, why coffee? Obviously you love coffee, but what did you see in the current market that you said, I want to make my own?
Man, I just think so I grew up just drinking regular coffee, like Folgers or Maxwell House. So I was known as that guy who's it's coffee, it's hot, I'm going to drink it. You know what I mean? And then I had good coffee. As dumb as that sounds, I had a Jamaica Blue. It's a real expensive, nice coffee. And I was like, this is 1,000 times better than anything I'm going to get at a gas station or a Wawa or Sheetz, whatever, it kind of just changed my view on the whole thing. I always drank it black, but even a real high quality coffee, people that drink with a bunch of creamer and stuff, a lot of times they can tolerate either a lot less creamer or no sugar. So it just kind of caught my attention. I was like, well, how do they do this? And I was up watching a documentary one night, and it was about a coffee plantation in Costa Rica. And they were processing the bean, harvesting the bean, and then roasting it. And I was like, well, that seems cool. And then I actually saw Evan Hafer from Black Rifle Coffee roasting green beans in a cast iron pan over a fire. And I was like, oh, well, I can do that, So I set up upstairs, and I'm roasting in the kitchen on the stove, and I'm filling the whole house up with smoke, and the coffee turns out terrible. So that was my first little experiment at it. And then I looked into roasters and how people were doing things. I haven't purchased a roaster yet. They're just crazy expensive. But I rent a roaster that I use. But yeah, it just kind of encapsulated me from there. I was trying different beans from different parts of the country, meeting all these different people from all over the country. I never in a million years thought I'd be on a Facebook group talking to a coffee farmer in Colombia or in Brazil. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I just kind of figured out the roasting process, and went over to my local roaster that I'm using, and he showed me some stuff, and it was just wow, this is really good. And I roasted maybe 60 pounds of coffee, just to give out to friends and family and stuff. And people were like, oh, this is really good. You should try to sell it. And I made just a post on Instagram, and I sold 80 bags of coffee. And it was just wow, what is this, And I mean, it's slowed down since then. You get your mom's buying coffee from you, and your aunt's oh, I'm so proud of you, honey. You know what I mean? You do that whole thing. But then it just people kept coming back to get it. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, man. It's far from where I want it to be, but I've only been doing it for, I don't know, 5 months, I think. Is
that it?
Total. Yeah, we just started. We haven't been around for a while.
That's awesome. I mean, just watching, I must have started following you right when you kind of kicked off then. And yeah, just watching your content's awesome. Alone, and if your coffee's even half as good as that, then hey, we're in business.
Right. Well, that's the hardest part is making the content. I really don't like doing it. You know what I mean? I don't
I know what you mean.
Spinning the camera, turning the camera around and talking to it and then erasing it. And then well, I'll keep that part and I'll cut that part and I'll edit that part. But it's getting easier. Yeah,
it's definitely that part of that side of things. I mean, you would think because I have a podcast and an Instagram page, I do like editing. I do like doing it. But especially in the beginning, you feel so stupid. When you grab, you got your phone and you're trying to figure out okay, ready, hit record and come on in and go, you feel so dumb.
I know.
So I've tried to take the approach of I'm just I don't want to make fun of influencers because it kind of is what I'm doing, but I'm not an influencer. I'll try to tell you the stuff that I really enjoy using and that I think you would enjoy using. But man, I'm not gonna just try to sell crap just to make money. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah, I know. It's I I always like made fun of influencers with like my friend, and like I work in like a machine shop and like with iron workers and stuff. Like it's a very like hard group of people that I work around,
right?
And it's like, oh guys, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go shoot a video for you know. And it's just like
right.
It's just weird, but you gotta get past. You just gotta get past that part of it. Not worry about other people's thing.
Well, and then you get into it and you're like, all right, I need all these new cameras and I need new this, new that. And you don't realize, guys, if you're going to get into doing content creation, it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap at all.
I can tell you right now, 99% of your stuff you can do on your iPhone, but you won't want to because you're going to think something better's out there. And then you're going to buy the expensive shit and then realize that you end up using your phone 90% of the time anyway.
It's all I use. Like, I'm looking at, like, your setup now. You got, like, a mic and, like, your things. I'm, like, I use, like, just my phone. And it's funny. I have this light ring that my phone is sitting in right now that I bought at Target. And I was, like, embarrassed to buy it because I'm like, this is for, like, 14-year-old girls. Here I am. I know. Like, and I got it. And I'm checking out with this light ring. And the lady's like, oh, going to take some selfies? I'm like, lady, do I look like the kind of guy that's taking selfies? 15 minutes later, I have it up in my basement. I'm like making videos on how to make a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's what I got. I got right behind the camera back there is one of those light rings. It was the same situation. You walk up there and you're like, I wonder what they're going to think of me.
I know.
A 35-year-old man buying a selfie light ring.
30 and camo all tatted up. And I'm like, no, I don't take selfies, weirdo.
Right.
Give me the light ring.
So back to coffee, like you were kind of talking about you kind of discovered good coffee. And I mean, I'd kind of argue that like good coffee and gas station coffee aren't even the same drink. Like, cause I'm sure you get it all the time. You get people like, what could be so much better about your coffee than the stuff Folgers? Folgers has been around forever. What could be better than that? And it's like, it's almost a completely separate drink. Like just the flavors and just everything about it, the experience, if you brew your own, if you do pour overs, things like that, it's a whole different thing that I think a lot of people would really enjoy if they would just let themselves try it.
Yeah, well, it just takes time. Like the thing with coffee is like most people, I get it now. Like my biggest thing to come over right now is like people want K-cups. They want K-cups in the worst way because people are busy. I mean, look at you this morning chasing your kids around. And right now I hear my kids upstairs going nuts. Everybody wants the convenience of a cup of coffee, and that's fine and it has a place. I don't want to sound like a snob, but like I have zero interest in drinking out of a K-cup anymore. You know, it's the fresh factor of it. You get a K-cup and you don't know how long that coffee's been in there. Like the factory that I work at has a K-cup system or a K-cup machine. And I looked back there the other day in like the storage unit, and there was probably 200 boxes of K-cups in there. And like, I know we're not drinking that this month. Like, you know what I mean? They must have bought such a huge supply, and that coffee's probably a year old, 2 years old. And you just get such a stale fact, but you don't know you're drinking stale coffee until you try like really good coffee. It's like drinking cheap whiskey or bourbon and then having a whatever, a super nice Eagle Rare or something. You know what I mean? It's you don't know until you know.
Well, I don't think many people even realize that, for lack of a better term, coffee kind of goes bad or like stale, like you said.
Yeah.
Like you want your coffee like fresh, and I think people just see it as like a dry ground up beans. Like what could possibly happen to that over the course of a month, 2 months, 3 months? Or in your case, 2 years before you finally brew that K-cup. And it's like, it's very important that coffee stays as fresh as you can get it. And I just think that, like I said, until you get into like wanting to make yourself better coffee, none of that stuff is even apparent to you. You just throw it in the machine, hit start, and then you just drink this crappy coffee and you're just content with it.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up doing it. Like your granddad drank the crappy coffee. Your dad probably drank the crappy coffee.
So how did this whole thing start? I assume you were saying like you didn't buy big industrial grade roasters. You didn't do any of that stuff. You kind of mentioned that your initial run with it was in a cast iron. What did it look like when you decided, you know what, I want to roast my own coffee? And then how has it grown since then?
I had to figure out a way to roast it. Like I looked at these little roasters for the house and stuff, and the roasters get really expensive really fast. And the problem that I was having was it was a good problem, but I was selling too much coffee to use a little barrel roaster at my house. I would be roasting coffee, 10 hours a day, and dad of 3, full-time job. Like it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to keep up. And it's not always slammed like that, but it's growing, it's becoming that. So I reached out to a couple of roasters, and like people don't want to share their stuff. You know what I mean? I'm like, can I rent your roaster? Can I rent time? So really, I spent a ton of time on YouTube learning how to use a roaster. So like, if I'm gonna borrow or rent a roaster from a guy, I don't have to ask him a bunch of questions. It's just like, hey, can I come in for an hour, roast some coffee, and leave? And I did that for a little while, and then it kind of turned into like it was too inconvenient for me to get out there and roast coffee. So now I do something called toll roasting. So I have that guy, and I source all the beans. I'll go over and we'll break down like a roast palette. Like we'll figure out what settings we're going to use and how we want it to come out. And then I'll just ship him green beans. He'll roast it and send it to me instead of me. Because it was in Flemington, New Jersey. It was like 45 minutes away. So I was like, oh, I have to go roast coffee. And I'm trying, everything that we sell is roasted within 2 weeks. We try not to get anything that sits in the house for longer than 2 weeks or sits in storage for more than 2 weeks. I drink myself. Like, I don't sell it to people, and it still tastes great compared to sitting stuff for a year. But you get your peak drinking period is like that week or the 2 weeks of the bean. I keep everything whole bean until we actually package it and sell it. Like I believe you ordered ground, I think, and. I'll grind it, put it in the bag, and then ship it out. That way it stays fresher way longer as a whole bean versus as ground, So everybody I talk to, I try to like push to like buy whole bean, just for the fresh factor. But yeah, so everything's roasted within 2 weeks. He ships it to me or I go pick it up from him. It just works better that way because I was kind of inconveniencing him. And I mean, it's his roastery, it's his machines. Like, I don't want to step on that. I don't want to burn the relationship because he's super knowledgeable about roasting coffee. I haven't been roasting coffee for a decade. You know what I mean? I've been roasting coffee for like 6 months. And really, it's with the help of this guy. This guy's been a huge help. But he kind of looks at it like, you're not my competition. Like, I'm selling to dudes that go hang out in the woods on the weekends and dig through swamps to set up duck blinds and decoys and stuff. He's like selling to like hipsters in the city. So it's like totally different like view. Like if I was setting up a shop right near him, I'm sure he'd be like, "Whoa, buddy!" But it's not that right. At all. But yeah, so it's just like continually trying to grow. The hardest part's not the coffee. It's not the sourcing of the bean. It's getting in front of people and doing things like this and meeting people like in the industry, if you will. But yeah, it's been a trip so far. It's been a lot of fun.
So what's the process look like when you're deciding on coffee beans? There's got to be a million places that you can get them from. So how do you find them and then choose like what makes the cut and what gets tossed aside? Like what makes you decide that this is a bean that I'm going to move forward with?
So there's like places where you can buy green beans from. And with my Brazilian roast, the Muley Mayhem roast we have now, I actually did that. I went through them. My first roast, though, I actually met the guy on Facebook. And I had him just send me some of his beans. And that's when I, like, smoked my house out in the kitchen, roasting them on the pan. You know what I mean? That was all that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, you need to send me more. I ruined all of them. Like, So he sent me another, like, sample. Or I bought another sample from the guy. And I went to a couple different places. And they were like, no, we're not going to roast your stuff. And then I finally ran into this guy. I was like, dude, can you roast this for me? Like, and he's like, yeah, how do you want to do it? I said, I want to do like a medium roast because I want to try to do like the first roast developed. I wanted like it to just be like in the middle. Like people who dark roast will still drink it, and people who like light roast it won't be too dark or bitter or tough for them. So he roasted it, and it turned out great. We did like a couple versions of it, and it's just taking that bean to a certain temperature and cooling it off fast enough to get the taste that you want, to extract the most out of the bean, to get that chocolate or the hazelnut, like this one is a chocolate hazelnut taste. It's just really playing with it and playing with a roaster and time with a roaster.
So that's one thing I've never really put two and two together with. So it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, I'm sure it does, but you can get a bean, like you can get multiple beans that are going to be the same. It comes down to how you roast it that changes the flavor and the light, medium, dark roast. So like your different flavors and things that you can buy, that's actually more in the roasting process?
Not necessarily. So a lot of it actually has to do with the elevation in which the bean was grown. So like the different farms, like the farm in Colombia where I bought my coffee is super high. I think it's at like 12,000 meters or something, 12,000 feet. I'm sorry. And it just depends on the soils and the cherry, because it really, a bean is a cherry. It's the pit of a cherry. So that has a lot to do with like the higher elevation, you get more floral, like lighter taste, and the lower stuff, you'll get a darker chocolatey or hazelnut taste. So really it depends on the bean as well. In different regions of the world, like Starbucks, all of their coffee comes from, well, most of their coffee farms are in Indonesia. And it's a lower elevation for the most part. But that's because they sell to, Americans like bitter, dark coffee. Like if you go to other countries and you get coffee, they drink a lot of floral tasting, like lemongrass, like really light, like airy coffee versus like really whole body coffee like America does, or like that burnt gas station coffee. A lot of that is just like, it's really a cheap bean. That's like a Robusta bean, and they do it because they know that's what Americans drink. They'd like a real heavy, dark, bitter taste. But yeah, I'm kind of like slowly trying to pull people towards like better coffee. Like I get a lot of people are buying this dark roast because they really like a dark roast, but I really want to like pull people to the lighter roast because like that's where the magic is, in my opinion. Like that's where it is. It's like you can really taste the coffee there, And there's nothing wrong with the dark roast. Like I drink the dark roast. But it's harder to get that taste and the different flavors and really taste the bean itself, not just like that hot water coffee taste that everybody's going for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in other countries, they tend to do, different cultures tend to like, they're drinking coffee probably for the enjoyment of the flavor.
Right.
It's an experience. Americans are like, give me caffeine and let's go.
I gotta put my right foot down as hard as I can and we gotta go. Yeah. Right. That's exactly what it is.
So moving to just kind of more about your company in specific, Our Grounds Coffee Company, what is the mission of that coffee company? I mean, you talked about you want to bring, you want to get people to drink better coffee, obviously. But then there's a whole nother side of it that you're involved with conservation. So kind of what is your mission with the conservation side that you're doing with your company?
So let me just kind of back up a little bit. Like my entire, I don't want to say career in the industry because I'm not like in the industry per se. Like I always wanted to be like this guy, this Cameron Haynes guy, or like this John Dudley guy. I wanted cool bow sponsorships and like boots and stuff like that. And like I just always wanted things. And once I had kids, it kind of turned into, I just want this to be here for my kids. Like I want there to be whitetails for them to hunt, and like their kids' and kids' kids. And I wanted them to have like the public land to go hunt on and the ability to do these things. So like this was my attempt at giving back to the industry in a way. You know what I mean? I'm at a point now where like if I want to buy a new gun, I just like save up and go buy a new gun. Like I don't need Savage Arms to send me a gun. Like I just want to like do it and make sure that it's there for like my kids because like I just give it. I give so much of a shit about this thing, like this like hunting thing. It's like my entire life. I mean, you can see I got bows and rifles and guns. Like I just love this thing, turkey decoys, and I just wanted to be there for my kids and like our future generation, And I selling coffee, and I was like, well, then I'll just donate portion of this, And like I get more excited when I can, like, give more to what I'm, going for versus like, oh, cool, I can, I don't know, go buy a new pair of boots. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or like, and everything I just want to be able to, I want to grow to a point where I can just continuously give and donate more and more from it, and still be able to benefit for myself. Obviously, like, it's not a nonprofit. Like, if I had people say, like, if you were so about it, you give all the money. But, like, at the end of the day, I still, like, I want to, like, live the American dream. I want to show my kids they don't have to, like, depend on a big corporation or whatever. Like, depend on yourself. Go out, earn a buck, and, get to go elk hunt 2 times a year or go chase a moose in Alaska. Like, I want to do those things, too. There's definitely a selfish part to this. It's not just, like, oh, I want to salt of the earth, save the world. Like, no, you know,
right.
I want to hunt fish way more than everybody, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so we take a portion from every bag that we sell. And right now we're donating the TRCP. That's Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. And that was kind of based on, and I really picked them because like they do a ton of great stuff. And our first roast is Roosevelt and it has Teddy Roosevelt riding a moose on it. So it's like, it fit like,
yeah, perfect.
you know, but and we'll see where that goes. I would ultimately love to have my own like conservation organization, but that's like a whole nother nonprofit. Like that's another whole thing. Like I said, 5 months. Like I don't even have like my full lineup of coffees out yet.
Yeah, I know what you mean with all that because like this podcast, I think my first one I dropped in like the middle of July, and yeah, it's like you want to have all these big dreams, and then sometimes you've got to just be like, hold on, dude. Because I mean, you can probably relate. You look at guys who've been doing this for years and years and years, and you're like, you not necessarily want to be them, but you want to be able to do the things that they're doing. And, you know, I don't think it's selfish to want to give to conservation and also make a living because you know this more than anybody. We both have full-time jobs, real jobs, families, and the things that, you know, my podcast and all that and your coffee company, like right now, that's still on the side. Like, you want to be able to end up doing that full time and doing something you enjoy, but like you still got to make a living off of it because it is a ton of work. It's a ton of work that people don't see. Like when they look at this show, they don't see me up last night till 1 a.m. editing for 3 hours. They don't see you going through everything you got to go through just to get the coffee roasted and then packaged and shipped out. I mean, there's so much more that goes behind all of this stuff that most people are consumers.
Yeah.
They take and take and take. That's what our culture does right now. And there's not enough appreciation for the people who are creating things. It's like they got what they wanted and they're moving on.
Yeah.
And you should just give all your money from your coffee sales, just donate it all. It's like, well, then what's going to pay for the next batch of coffee?
Right. I have to buy more coffee. Like, the farmer's not giving it to me because I want to help American wildlife. Like, he doesn't care. He lives in Colombia.
Right. Right. Yeah. And like, if you guys want to keep listening to this crappy podcast, I got to buy better mic equipment.
Right. If you don't want it to, you know, if you don't want us to restart a bunch of times, like, you know.
Right.
I know.
But yeah. So what are some ways that people can, obviously, like there's the real easy ways, like go buy a bag of coffee from you, and that's contributing to conservation. What are some of the easier ways that people can get involved in conservation? Because I know a lot of times the excuse is, I'm just so busy, I don't have the time, I don't know where to start. Are there some easier, like low-hanging fruit that if people, you know, they don't have time to devote to like getting on their NWTF boards and they don't have all that, what else could they be doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of ways, and there's like ways that people know that don't even realize they're doing it. Like the Pittman-Robertson Act. Do you know what that is? It's like
for those that don't know, explain it. Yeah,
it's like an excise tax that, like, it's a self-imposed excise tax that, like, hunters and not anglers, but hunters and outdoorsmen, they wanted to be charged an extra tax to help with conservation. So, like, when you go buy archery equipment, you're giving to that tax. It's an 11% tax is charged to the manufacturer. So, like Easton, Arrows, or Matthews, they get charged this tax. And then it's a 10%, I think it's 10 or 11% tax to them. And then they ultimately charge us for it, or the consumer for it. So really just buying equipment does that. And there's another one called the Dingell-Johnson Act. That's for fishermen. So it's the same concept, but for anglers. And really the easiest way is just to buy a hunt license. You know, the majority of sales, or the majority of conservation money, comes from buying your license. So buying a duck stamp, even if you don't duck hunt, is not a bad idea because you're just giving to waterfowl, the federal duck stamp. Buying a bear tag if you're not a bear hunter or you don't bear hunt in your state. It's just buying more doe tags. Always just dumping into that pot. And then being smart where you buy your products from. Not even saying my coffee, like my coffee, sure, yes, but like buy from like 2% for conservation. Have you ever heard of that? That's like a big thing now.
No, I haven't.
I'm actually working on getting certified for it now. It's a process in which they check to make sure companies are actually donating money. not just like selling on this, hey, this is what we're doing, and then not following through it. So I'm working on getting that now, and then it'll just be it's got a little 2% symbol that pops on your logo. Stone Glacier, if you're familiar with them, they're 2%. Sitka Camo. There's a ton of companies, and just looking at those lists of companies, and knowing that you're giving money to people who have the same the ideals as you do, that you want this thing to grow and be here, because it's always under attack. It's
Oh yeah.
how often are you reading about like Jersey's bear season getting banned, and now they're bringing it back, and like there's a ton going on in Oregon right now that would blow your mind.
Oh man, Oregon is a crap show.
Yeah, it's kind of a dumpster fire.
I would use the S word. I'm trying to cut down the cussing, but man, it's a shit show. I'll just say
it's a dumpster fire, man. It's really bad right now.
I think, there's way more opportunity and way more ways than people even realize. I think I've heard the statement before that all hunters are conservationists, and I mean that explains what that means, And hey, if you can buy an extra doe tag, like you're saying, small things like that, maybe in your county you can buy an extra doe tag, even though you probably won't fill it, that's going to go towards not just the remainder of your life, that's contributing to make sure your kids and everybody else has an opportunity to keep hunting, and we can, like you said, it's a constant fight, but if we don't have the land and the resources to even fight for anymore, then the fight's for nothing. So, I'd like to see. I think that I hate to use the term younger generation, but like I'm like 35, so I still try to consider myself young for my feelings. But like I feel like our generation of people have really started to try to ramp that up a lot and really pay more attention to it, because I think there was a period of time where public lands are starting to go away and people they want to hunt just to hunt and don't really care about how do these public lands stay open and functional. And I think we're starting to see a big trend in people really getting interested and wanting to be involved as much as they can, and that's really encouraging.
Yeah,
but
even I would call myself a guy who hunts more than the average guy. You know what I mean? Or really dedicates a lot of my time to this thing. And I never thought of it until we moved to North Carolina a couple of years ago. We moved down there. I didn't have any of the farms I used to hunt. I didn't have my grandfather's property where I cut my teeth at. I was just like, well, shit, how am I going to hunt? And then I'm like, well, I guess I'll look for public land. And then I go kicking around there, and it's awesome. You have this whole ecosystem or this whole thing that you can just go do whatever. And it's anybody. It's not like just the hunters. It's not an anglers. You can go watch birds if that's what you're into. You can go run your dogs around the woods if that's what you're into. And I hear hunters complain about guys who go and use it that aren't out there hunting. Does it suck when there's a dude birding on November 4th? Yeah, it really sucks when I show up and there's 4 guys there looking at a parakeet through a set of binoculars. Yeah, sure, that sucks, but I mean, it's their right to be there.
Absolutely.
It's just as much theirs as it is ours. And that's hard to come by. It's hard to get in that mindset, especially now that I'm getting older. I used to get annoyed. This sounds bad, but I used to get annoyed when I'd be out there and I'd see a guy trump through the woods with 3 kids and stinking the woods up. And then now that I'm a dad, I'm like, oh, well, that's just trying to just do the right thing.
Now you're that guy.
that guy, trust me, that guy is just surviving right now. He's not thriving.
Right.
So, it's hard to find that mindset. And as a guy who was very avid about hunting and fishing, I never thought about it until I lost where I hunted, or not lost it, but moved away from where I hunted. And there's a certain power to knowing that no matter where you are, I can find a piece of woods on OnX Maps or on Go Hunt's new app or whatever, and I know I can go there and kill a deer. Get to a point where your confidence level's high enough, because it's intimidating to go out on public land. It's super intimidating when you're first starting. I'm sure you feel now, having only a couple of years in, it's intimidating. You park and you don't want to piss other hunters off, or you don't want to stomp on somebody's feet. But at the end of the day, that's just what it is. It's everybody's backyard. So you kind of have to just kind of get over it and get after it.
Yeah, it does get better. My first year, you kind of learn how your public lands work, and you kind of learn a lot of times if I saw a car, I wouldn't go in.
Yeah,
And it's like now I kind of understand the lay of the land. I kind of know how it works, where hunters generally go, so I can work around that. But yeah, it can be very intimidating. But yeah, like you said, that's part of the game. Everybody that's out there on public land, they were out there for the first time one time also.
Oh yeah.
So, for guys who are just learning, don't be afraid. Like if you run into another hunter, wave at him, go the other way, but it's going to happen. And for those of us who have been out there for a few years, when that does happen, instead of being like, they just ruined my whole hunt.
Yeah.
Try to remember that you were that guy at one point in time, and they're much more upset about that situation than you are.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of comes down like, don't be an asshole. Like, I don't know if you want me to curse on here or not, but like, just don't be an asshole. No, you go for it. Like, just don't be an asshole to people. Like, and don't be afraid to take somebody hunting or like show them or tell them. Just be like, hey man, like, look, when you come up to a parking lot like that, and it's just all on them on how they receive it. Like, they could be an asshole just as well. Like, there's lots of assholes out there.
For sure.
But just tell them, like, hey man, like when you see this, or like, just try to be respectful. And they probably don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You go into uncomfortable. Like if I go into a formal dinner, I'm afraid to do anything. You know what I mean? Right. Like I'm like putting my hands on my lap. Like I don't know which fork to eat with. Like that's how they look at it. Like if you're just getting into it, you don't know.
So back to coffee, I want to kind of get to what is your favorite method for brewing? There's a couple different ways that, I mean, I'm sure there's many more than I even know of. You've got like a French press, you got a pour over, which is what I do all the time. What's your favorite? And then what are the pros and cons of the different ways of brewing coffee?
Yeah. So really my favorite way is anytime I'm outside. Like if I'm sitting on the tailgate of my truck and heating water up on a stove, it's my favorite time. Not because the coffee is better, but because of what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that makes me happier than sitting on the tailgate of my truck with a buddy or alone, doesn't matter, and making up a hot cup of coffee on a cold day. Like nothing makes me happier. But like when I'm at home, my favorite way to do it is definitely pour over. But that's because I like a lighter, airier coffee. So like with a French press, I use a French press all the time too. I had French press this morning. I typically use in a darker roast. It's got a smaller ratio, so like a 1-to-12 ratio. That's 1 gram of coffee to 12 grams of water. And you're getting a more whole-bodied taste. Like your coffee's going to feel a little heavier. In a French press, a lot of people complain about like it's kind of grainy at the bottom, but that's because you're letting it steep. It's like a full immersion. But I personally really just like a Chemex. I use a Chemex all the time. And once you get a routine down with it, it doesn't take that long. It takes me just as long to make a cup of coffee with a Chemex as it does for me to fill up a Mr. Coffee pot or a Ninja coffee pot and run a whole pot. And you just taste the benefits of the coffee in it. I think the most important part is really just grinding fresh and having fresh coffee. You doing a pour over with Maxwell House out of the blue tub, it still sucks. It still tastes like shit. Like, and you don't need, you don't need a $5,000 espresso machine. Like, I have multiple espresso machines in my Amazon shopping cart, and I haven't pulled the trigger on them because they're thousands of dollars. Like, you don't need that to have a good cup of coffee. Like my setup that I use every day probably costs me $50, like between buying a Chemex, the filter, and a kettle to heat stuff up in. Like, and a coffee scale. That's another big thing is having a coffee scale. So you you actually understand how much you're using. Not just like, 2 spoonfuls. You're using like 30 grams of coffee. And then once you do it a bunch of times, like I don't even have to use that stuff anymore. I just kind of, mad scientist out. Like,
right.
But I really like a pour over myself. And I actually it's part of my morning routine. I get up early for work. I get up at 4. I'm downstairs running a grinder, trying not to wake kids up. And then I just kind of I go through my whole hipster morning. Like I have my scale, my coffee, and it's just part of my morning routine. I like the act of actually doing it, not just slapping a K-cup in and go.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I especially like in the wintertime when you've got that, you got your kettle heated up and you just get to sit there, and as you pour and it's bubbling and stuff and you can just smell it. Yeah. It's just like you said, it's a very calm experience to start your day off. And it sounds really dumb, and I don't want to over exaggerate this, but you feel like you started your day accomplishing something versus just like, here's your coffee, drive to work and try to drink it. Like, you've already done something. You've already created something that morning. And it's just as much the experience of it than it is the quality of the coffee too, you know?
Yeah.
So what would you recommend, proper storage of coffee beans? Some people say to throw them in the freezer when they're not there. Some people, you know, they tell you not to grind ahead of time, like try to grind fresh. What are your best practices for, like, let's say I buy 2 bags of coffee from you and I know I'm not going to drink both of them that week. How should I be storing the rest of the coffee until I grind it?
So I like to, I have our coffee bags. I have one sitting somewhere, but they're good for storing coffee. They're good for shipping coffee, but really that's what they're used for. And then I use any kind of I don't know what they're called. They're like the Onyx or ONX storage things where you like push the center button and the lid pops off and it like sucks all the air out. I use those and I just let it sit there with the whole bean. And then I grind as I go, as I go. As far as like putting them in the fridge, I don't do that. When you have the moisture, you build bacteria. Gotcha. And then that really, one, it's dirtier, but 2, it really raises the acid levels or the acidity levels in the coffee. So then you start to get your like bitter taste. Like there's a difference between like having a lot of like high acid bitter versus just like that little bit of bite that you're looking for when you're drinking coffee. And that comes from stale coffee or dirty coffee, or kind of like older coffee, you know?
Yeah. And then to kind of close it out, for those of us who are hunters, which I'm guessing is everybody listening to the show, what is your process for brewing out in the field? I've seen a lot of your videos where you're brewing coffee on the back of your truck. Some people probably aren't going to tote around like one of those Coleman propane stoves. What are some other options to get yourself fresh coffee, like right before you head out into the woods?
Yeah, so there's like a bunch of stoves you can use. I use Jetboil. I really like the Jetboil. It doesn't burn a ton of fuel, so I'm not always buying little canisters or running out. But there's a ton of them. You can. The MSR Reactor has one. Whisper Light has one. There's a bunch of them. I like to use a Jetboil. It's super easy. I don't know if you have one. And then, so like if I'm in the truck, I'll have my stove. You're gonna need something to heat your water up, whether that's a fire if you have time to make a fire, or a Jetboil. The Jetboil is super easy. It's not crazy expensive. And I'll heat all my water up with that. And then I have a hand grinder, so I can grind the beans in the field. I used to just take a bag of ground coffee everywhere with me and keep it in the truck or put it in my bag, and like measure out my sizes prior to, like in a Ziploc bag or something. But I feel like, I own a coffee company. I can grind my own beans. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if anybody has the right to go out there and like hand grind coffee beans, it's probably the guy who like devotes most of his life to it.
If you're nice to him, he'll probably give you a cup of coffee too.
Yeah, of course. I always have tons of coffee. So like if I'm at the truck, I bought one of these deck drawer systems. I don't know if you know what they are. It's like
I've been looking at that. Yeah,
dude, I'm telling you, it's the best thing I ever did for my truck. I absolutely love it. I rave about it. They're expensive, but like, God, it makes everything so much more convenient.
I've heard both ways, because I was like right about to pull the trigger, and then I had a buddy who had one, and he's like, "This thing sucks." And I don't know if it was because of what he was using it for. He was using it more for like construction type stuff for his job.
Yeah.
It looks like it would be perfect, because right now I just have my truck bed full of totes anyway with my hunting gear and clothes. It'd be way easier to just have that thing pull out, and then you still kind of have the functionality of your truck bed, because that thing can handle weight on top of it, right?
Yeah, it holds like 2,000 pounds. You can pull 4-wheelers up on the back of them and then just strap them down. Yeah, it depends on like the guy, like who you are. Like I spend the majority of my time, like if I'm not at work and I'm not at home, I'm probably kicking around the woods. You know what I mean? I'm not a construction worker, so I'm not always using the bed of my truck. Usually I'm just throwing deer in it, or like the other day I picked up a couch. Like you can still use your truck. You just have to be sure to strap stuff down. Like I have a cap on my truck, so I can like sleep on top of it when I'm hunting in the back or, out on public land far from the house. But bring it back. Like I just have like it's called the D box from them, and it's just a box full of like coffee supplies. And most people aren't going to carry all that. But like if you have a dry bag, like, just a bag you put stuff in to keep stuff dry, like when you're hunting in the water or hunting in the swamp or fishing, I usually throw my coffee in that because you don't want to like wipe out and like get it wet. If you get it wet, it's done for. And then I'll just throw my jet boil in there. I have like a French press that sits inside the jet boil. It's perfect. And that's like if I'm backpacking in and hunting, I'll just carry that little setup. Plus I'm carrying that to like heat up my food. Like a pizza refuel meal or like a Mountain House meal, refry or rehydrate. I have that anyway, so I'm gonna make coffee in it too. But like as far as I get the truck, like I carry Chemex and everything. I'm like a basic full barista in the back of my truck. But again, like I feel like I'm the exception. Like but it really doesn't have to be that complicated. If you have a jet boiler or a way to heat up water. The jet boil has like a built-in French press that's like $19 or something. It's just a plunger. It really isn't that hard. Doesn't have to be that complicated, especially once you do it a couple times. Like know how much coffee you want to put in, like keep it separate even. Like I've had times where I just filled up multiple Ziploc bags if I know it's going to be out for multiple days, and I would just throw it with like the day's rations of food and then just dump it in and go from there and not have to really think about it. And not have to like eyeball it and like make a shitty cup and then dump a shitty cup out to make a better cup. Like you just got to do it and not be afraid to screw it up.
Yeah. That's that's the one thing with pour overs. I used to when I was first starting and I was using a scale heavily. I had this crappy scale and it would like time out. And you know how it is, like you're making your cup of coffee. Maybe it's on a Saturday, so the kids are up, and then they yell and you turn around. And then all of a sudden the scale went off, and you're like, you got to start over. My wife's like, it's fine, just And I've tried that, and I can tell you from experience, it's not going to turn out good. Yeah. So just dump it and try again.
Right. Yeah, right. It's not a big deal. Just start over.
Yeah. Well, hey man, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with me today. I had a great time learning. I learned a lot more about coffee and just your company. I think your company's the mission of your company. Just speaks for itself. It's awesome. It's very, very important for our hunting community. And if we can drink great coffee and we can conserve our public lands at the same time, that sounds like a win-win to me. So let everybody know where they can find you guys online. What's your website where they can order coffee and check you out, and where can they find you on like Instagram and things like that?
Yeah. So it's aggroundscoffeeco.com. Right now, like our big thing is we're trying to build our coffee club up. So like our monthly subscriber. So if you use the promo code OGCC in all capitals, you'll get free coffee. Just pay for the shipping. Your first month will be free. And then every month we'll ship it out to you, so you don't really have to think about it. And then Instagram is just Our Grounds Coffee Co. Facebook is the same thing, Our Grounds Coffee Co.
All right, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you hanging out. And guys, make sure you go check him out. I have a shipment of coffee coming in today. It's probably here now, and I'm really excited to get it going. Guys, before we head out, I want you to go check out Buzzard Roost saddles. Again, they're the most comfortable, most adjustable saddles on the market. They can handle whatever you want to throw at them. They're supportive of law enforcement, first responders, and military, and they're made right in America. If you want to get one for yourself, use code AAFP10. That's going to get you 10% off. And guys, make sure you're following us on Instagram. We're at Antler Feather Co. We're also on YouTube, Antler and Feather Co. with the and sign, no spaces. And we're over on Facebook too. So if you found value in this show, if you feel like you guys learned something new, make sure that you are subscribing, following, like, share, rate, and review, all of that crazy social media stuff. Like I always say, I'm not making money off of this. All I want to do is get the show in front of more people and continue to get great guests on, which ultimately is going to make you more deadly in the woods. So I appreciate every one of you guys for hanging out this week. We will catch up with you next week. This is the Antler and Feather Co. podcast. You are listening to the Antler and Feather Co. podcast.